Okay, so welcome everybody. Everyone have a source sheet. Okay, a thanks to Rabbi Joshua Flug for providing the source material that I am using. So we have a new phenomenon. We'll soon see that not according to everyone is it such a new phenomenon. We have a phenomenon of surrogate motherhood, where a woman can conceive a child but cannot carry it to term, right? Or IVF, in vitro fertilization. And we have sometimes that a surrogate mother, carries the child for another woman. Another woman either actually conceived the child, and then it was moved to the womb, uterus, or that it was done in vitro, and once again, and it goes to, there's a surrogate mother, someone else carries this child for the actual, we'll call it the contraceptive mother, right? The mother who conceived, the conceiving mother, and there's a birth mother. So the question that comes up is, who is actually considered to be the mother? What are ramifications of that question?
Well, a sperm and an egg are simply that.
Without answering the question, what are the ramifications of it being this mother's son or daughter, or that mother's son or daughter?
Both, because the nourishment is coming from...
I'm not asking for an answer
I'm
of
sorry.
whose child it is. What is, a ramification will be the Jewish status. Let's say one of them is Jewish, and the other one is not Jewish. Is this child Jewish or not? If one of them, let's say they're both Jewish, and one of them is the daughter of a Levi or a Kohen, right? Even though her husband is not, is there a Pidyon Haben, a redemption of the firstborn son, or not? How about who can that child marry? Can they marry a sibling from the birth mother? Can they marry a sibling from the conceiving mother? Who is that person a sibling to? When it comes to inheritance, who would inherit that person? So there are many, many halachic ramifications of deciding who is the mother, determining, I should say, halachically, who is the mother. Now, the Talmud, of course, does not discuss this directly, but we'll see that both in the Torah and in the Talmud, this topic is touched upon in a very fascinating way. We all know about Rachel and Leah, right? Two of the matriarchs. So it's very interesting. If you look at the source sheet, Bereshit, Perek Lamed, chapter 30, the way the Torah describes everyone's birth is as follows. I just took two examples. Verse 17, Vayishma Elokim el Leah. God heard Leah, Vatahar, she conceived, Vatelen, she gave birth to Yaakov, Ben Chamishi, right, a fifth son for Jacob. Two psukim later, Yotet, Vatar Od Leah, she conceived again, Vateled, Ben Shishi Yaakov, and she gave birth to a sixth son for Jacob. Two verses later, 21, Chafal Va'achar Yalda Bat, and afterwards she gave birth to a daughter, Vatikra et Shema Dina, and they named her Dina. What is different about verse 21 as opposed to verses 17 and 19? What's missing? She didn't conceive.
Yeah, if she bore.
Right? In verse 17, she conceived and she birthed. She gave birth. She bore. Verse 19, she conceived and she bore. Verse 21 does not mention conceiving, just mentions that she bore a child. The Gemara in Brachot, we have it both in Hebrew and in English. In Hebrew, it starts with the last word on the first line. The English, it's the entire paragraph. The Gemara Brachot says that if a man's wife is pregnant and he starts to daven, he prays, and he says, let it be the will of God. God, please, I'm praying to you, I'm begging you, let my wife have a son. Let my wife have it. Whatever he might daven for, the Mishnah said, it is harezo tefillat shav. It is a tefillah that is vain. Right? It is what it is. It is what it is. The Gemara asks, V'lo mahani rachame? And prayer would not be effective in such a case? Is that so? Mativ Rav Yosef challenges that. V'achar yalda bat. V'tikrat shema Dina. Afterwards she gave birth to a daughter. And she named her Dina. Mai v'achar. What does it mean afterwards? Amar Rav says, La'achar shadana Leah din ba'atzma. After Leah made a mathematical calculation, judgment. V'amran, she said, Yud bet shvatim atidin latzeit miyakov. We know through prophecy there will be 12 tribes that Yaakov will have. Shisha yatsu mimeni. Already 6. I've given birth to 6. Va'arba'a min hashvachot. And 4 have already been born from Zilpah and Bilhah. Harei asara. So we're now at 10. Im zeh zachar. If this will be a male, lo tehei achuti Rachel ka'achar hashvachot. My sister Rachel will not be like one of the maidservants. Miyad immediately nepcha lebat. What happened? This embryo was transformed from a boy to a girl. Vatikra et shema Dina. And they named her, and she named her Dina because of this din, this calculation that she made. So the Gemara is asking, so you see, tefillah can help. The Gemara says, Ein mazkirin ma'aseh nisim. Don't bring in miracles. Okay? That's not you and I. That might be Leah. That's not you and I. So according to the Gemara, what answer might we give? Why didn't it say that she conceived and gave birth to Dina?
Lock it in.
What answer could we give? Why didn't the pasuk say she conceived and gave birth to Dina?
That would make a problem, or wouldn't it make a problem actually?
Because did she conceive Dina according to the Gemara?
No.
So it's not going to say she conceived and gave birth to Dina. She didn't conceive and give birth to Dina. She conceived and then it was transformed to Dina. So therefore it says that she gave birth to Dina. It doesn't say she conceived Dina. But let's look at the Targum Yonatan ben Uziel. Have it both in Hebrew and English. Omin Batar Kadein. Right? He translates the Torah into Aramaic, as does Targum Onkelos, but he adds a lot more. Omin Batar Kadein Yilida Brat, and afterwards a daughter was born. Ukrat Yad Shema Dina, and she named her Dina. Arum Amrat, because she said, Dinu min kadam Hashem, Diahon mini palgit shvataya. Right? It's already been decreed from God that from me will come 6 tribes. Haram min Rachel achativ kun train shiftin. Right? And from Rachel, my sister, there'll be 2 tribes. Hechamad and min chadim and atah, just equal to the amount that each of the maidservants had given birth. Ushmiya min kadam Hashem tzluta de Leah. And the prayer of Leah was heard. V'itchalfu ubaraya b'meihon. They switched the embryos. The embryo, Targum Yonatan says, that was by Rachel, was surrogate mothered over to Leah. And the one who was to be by Leah was over to Rachel. Yahiv Yosef Rachel. Yosef was placed into the womb of Rachel. The Dina b'ma'ad Leah. And Dinah was placed into the womb of Leah. So what do we have over here? We have surrogate motherhood, according to the Targum Yonasan. Right? In other words, Dinah was conceived by Rachel, but was birthed by Leah.
Who did the switch? God?
God did it. Not Dr. Goldberg. Right? God
He's a
did it.
pulmonary doctor.
Okay? So according to Targum Yonatan ben Uziel, what do we have over here? We have ourselves a case of surrogate motherhood. Now, if we're following not the Gemara's account of what happened, but we're following Targum Yonatan's account, so what would we say? Well, how do we always refer to Dinah? Dinah bat who? Dinah, the daughter of who? Leah.
Oh.
Dinah is always presented as the daughter of Leah. Therefore, that would seem to indicate that we go after the birth, not after the conception. So far clear?
But where's the proof of all this?
Right now we're laying out,
Okay.
right? So, according to Targum Yonatan, there's no proof. The Gemara says that's not what happened. Targum Yonatan is bringing a message that is what happened. According to Targum Yonatan, according to his view, that's what happened. We'll soon see another much more practical case where it's very concrete. But according to Ian, according to what Targum Yonatan's depiction of what occurred, so here's a case that Dinah was conceived by Rachel, was birthed by Leah, and the Torah always refers to her as Dinah bat Leah. However, it gets a little bit more cloudy. In this week's Parsha, we talk about Yaakov coming down to Mitzrayim, and we list all of his children and grandchildren. Altogether, it was how many people?
69?
69 or 70, actually. Right? But there was one who was Bein HaChomot, correct. Pasuk Yud, both Hebrew and English, on the second side of the source material. Uvenei Shimon, the children of Shimon, were Yemuel, Yamin, Ohad, Yachin, Tzochar, and Shaul ben HaKanaanit, and Shaul the son of a Canaanitess. What is this? A Canaanitess. What does that mean? Rashi says, Ben Dinah. This was the son of Dinah. Why is she called a Canaanite? A Canaanite? Sheniv Allah l'Kanaani. Because she was violated by a Canaani. Who was that? Shechem ben Chamor. Ukeshahargu et Shechem. And when Shechem was killed, Lo haita Dinah rotza latzeit. Dinah did not want to leave that village. Ad shenishba la Shimon sheyisa ena. Until Shimon promised that he would marry her. So according to Rashi, Shimon married Dinah and had a son whose name was Shaul. Any problem you could think of Shimon marrying Dinah? Siblings. Shimon was the son of Yaakov and Leah, and Dinah was the son of Yaakov and Dinah, thank you, was the daughter of Yaakov and, well, that's the issue, right? Now, Bnei Noach are not allowed to marry maternal sisters. Maternal sister or brother cannot get married. Paternal sister and brother can get married. Now, the Torah explains, having Hebrew not in English, Uperish Rashi. Rashi said Ben Dina, the son of Dina, Shenivala, who had relations with Shechem, and no one wanted to marry her until Shimon swore, or she wouldn't leave until Shimon would swore that he would marry her. Vitema, it's astounding. Eich nasa Shimon achota minayin. How did Shimon marry his maternal sister? Well, the Fi HaMedrash, according to the Medrash, though, Ati Shapir. It goes well. It can be understood. She'ika herayon shel Dina haya bebeten Rachel. She was actually conceived by who? By Rachel. And therefore, who she considered to be the daughter of? The daughter of Rachel. And therefore, it's only paternal brother-sister, not maternal brother-sister, that B'nai Noach, Noahides, are allowed to marry. That's the explanation that he gives. See, he explains, how do we understand that Shimon married his sister? It must be that according to that measure, she was conceived by Rachel, and she's considered to be the daughter of Rachel. In which case, therefore, as in Noahide, they were allowed to marry one another. Yes, Jan?
And how come the two previous passages of Torah say daughter of Leah?
Because she was birthed by Leah.
So wouldn't that indicate that that's...
So on one hand, calling her Bat Leah seems to indicate that we follow the birth. On the other hand, this ruling or this explanation of the Torah seems to indicate that we follow conception and not birth. So even according to this Targum Yonatan ben Uziel, that this was a case of surrogate motherhood, it's cloudy, it's unclear. We call her Bat Leah on one hand, which seems to me that we look at the birth mother, and then she was allowed to marry her paternal brother, only allowed if it's not her maternal brother, which makes Dinah the daughter of Rachel and not Leah. Okay. Now, we actually say in the Talmud they had a situation of one mother conceiving and a different mother, or at least a woman with a different status, giving birth. How do we have that? Well, we have a woman who converts while she is pregnant. Interesting. So the child was conceived by a non-Jewish mother. The child was born to a Jewish mother. Oh, so they didn't have, except in the miraculous case, as the Gemara calls it, of Rachel and Leah, they didn't have a case where a child was actually transferred from the conception mother to the birth mother. But we do have two different mothers, so to speak, or the different halachic status of a mother at the time of conception and a mother at the time of birth. So if we say that it's conception, the child needs to undergo conversion. If we say it's birth, because the child's mother is the conception mother who was non-Jewish. If we look at birth, the child was born to a Jewish mother, and it's birth that determines who the mother is. So therefore the child does not need to undergo conversion. Interesting. So that's something that the Talmud does address. Let's take a look at that. This is Babylonian Talmud, Yevamot 97b. Once again, in English, we start with coming here. In Hebrew, we're starting on the top line, the fourth to last word, abbreviation actually, Toshma, coming here. Shnei achim te'umin. Two brothers who are twins. Gerim, who both converted. V'chein meshuchrarim, or two twin brothers who were slaves who were emancipated. So now they become Jewish or fully Jewish. One of them dies, leaving a wife and no children. Normally when you have paternal brothers, the laws of Yibum kick in. And the paternal brother either needs to marry her, which is Yibum, or needs to release her through a process called Chalitza. In this case, they both converted. These twin brothers both converted. One of them died, leaving no children. Lo cholzin v'lo miyabmin. The remaining, the surviving wife cannot have Yibum and does not need Chalitza. Why not? Why is there no need for Chalitza? Or why is there no allowance of Yibum? Since they both converted, when a person converts, it's considered as if they are now being born. Therefore, they're not related to one another.
To the paternal part? The paternal.
It doesn't make a difference.
Okay.
Either way. But we'll soon see your point, Chai Rivka. Ve'ein chayav mishum eshet ach. And if one of them would, heaven forbid, have an affair with his brother's wife, so there's an issue here of a married woman, but there's not an issue here of his brother's wife. Haita horatan, here's our case, my friends. Horatan shelo b'kedusha v'leidatan b'kedusha. Let's say the child was conceived, these twins were conceived before the mother had converted, v'leidatan b'kedusha, and they were born after the mother had converted. Lo choltzin v'lo miyabmin. There will still not be either chalitza or yibum, because that goes via the father, and the father's birth, so to speak, is at the time of conception, and at that time, right, the mother was not Jewish, or the father was not Jewish, so there is not the lineage of the father. Aval chayav mishum eshet ach. But were one to, heaven forbid, have an affair with his brother's wife, that's not just a married woman, that is brother's wife. So they're considered to be brothers, which indicates, now if they're horatam v'leidatan b'kedusha, if the mother had already converted if the mother had already converted, right? So then already they're like Yisroel before they were born. But what do we see over here? This is his brother's, his halachic brother's wife. So what does that indicate? At what point is their status determined?
After conversion.
At birth, which was after conversion. At birth, not at conception. If it's conception, then they were not considered to be related. Right? Once they, right? If it's at conception, so we see that birth, the mother was Jewish at the time. Now we have the issue of Eshet Ach. The mother had already converted when after conception before birth. So we see now they have the status of brothers. So we see that it seems to be following the birth. However, yes?
I'm confused. There's the case of two adult brothers who convert, and then the birth starts.
So at that point, they're not
No
related
relation.
to one another.
Halachically.
Correct.
The second case is that a different family and the father converts sometime.
The father's out of the picture. There was a woman, a non-Jewish woman, who's pregnant with twins.
Okay, so it's
She
completely
converts.
different.
She converts, and the boys are born. There is a status of
boy. Okay.
twin boys. Now, his brother's wife right? Jim and Tim. Tim's wife is considered Jim's brother's wife. Okay?
So in that case, the
the-
chalitza would and the yibum would apply if one of
There's
them
no
died.
chalitza yibum, because that you need to have paternal brothers.
Okay.
So that's aside. But this is his brother's wife.
Okay.
It's only his brother's wife if we're looking at the birth. However, there is another Talmud, another case in the Talmud, actually in the same tractate, Yevamot 78a and b, and there we say as follows: Da'amar Rava said, Nachrit me'uberet, a non-Jewish pregnant woman, shenit gayara, who converted, bina ein tzarich tevila. Her child will not need to be immersed in a mikvah once it's born. Amay ein tzarich tevila. The Gemara says, what do you mean? Why does the child not need his own or her own immersion in a mikvah? Maybe you want to say it's because of the teaching of Rabbi Yitzchak, who said Dvar Torah, who says that according to Torah, Torah demands Ruba umakbid alav chotzeitz. If a person goes into the mikvah, it's only considered when a person goes into the mikvah, one's body in its entirety must come in contact with the water. Now, based on Torah law, as long as the only time it's considered a separation between the person and the water is if most of the body is covered with something that is what's the term with
Interstitial.
Sorry?
Interstitial.
Perhaps, I don't know.
Impermeable.
Well, okay. Not necessarily, right? That interposes itself. That's the term I was looking for. Right? So it's only if most of the body is covered, something that interposes between the body and the water of the mikvah, and it's something that he doesn't want or she doesn't want on their body. But less than that, rubo, if it's most of the body, she'eno makbid, the person doesn't mind it being there, eino chotzetz, right? But even if it's most of the body, but it's not, but the person doesn't mind it being there, it's not a chatzitza. So maybe you want to say, well, the child, the embryo, doesn't mind the mother being there. Actually, it's pretty important that the mother is there, right? And therefore, it's not a chatzitza. But if a person is completely covered with something, that is chotzetz. So Gemara asks, how can the immersion of the mother help this child? The Gemara answers, Shani Ubar, Dahainu Rabite. The embryo is different. That's not considered something that is separating, because that is what enables it to grow and stay alive. So the mother is not considered a chatzitza, an interposing. But what do we see is happening over here according to this? How are we viewing it? We're viewing it that the child needs immersion in the mikvah.
But through the mother.
And we're debating, right, does it work through the mother or not? But the child needs immersion in a mikvah. Why does the child need immersion in the mikvah? Because of the earlier status, because of the status that they have from conception.
So this would argue for conception.
So this would indicate that it's conception, right? So we need to resolve these two Gemaras. The Gemara which talks about the need of the fetus to immerse in the mikvah seems to be saying conception is what sets the status of who the mother is. So this child has a non-Jewish mother. It needs immersion in the mikvah. But the Gemara which said that the two brothers, that it's a Jim and Tim, right? Tim's wife is Jim's brother's wife. even though they were conceived before conversion, but they were birthed after conversion. So we see that it's birth. That's what makes them brothers. So before we have to see how did the commentators, how do they resolve this seeming contradiction in the Gemara, and based on that, we will have the answer to our question of how do we look at it? Is it birth or is it conception? Yes, Steve.
What part does the amniotic sac play in all this? Because couldn't you say that if the fetus is completely enveloped in it, so then
You're talking about chatzitza?
yeah.
Okay. So the Gemara says that since this is how this child grows, it would not be considered to be a chatzitza. Okay? And this actually is based on another question I didn't want to go off into, which is the ubar considered to be a limb of the mother, or is it considered to be a foreign body inside the mother? If it's a limb of the mother, well, when she did immersion, was her heart immersed in the mikveh? Was her brain? Was her liver? Was her spleen? Was her lung? Right? But what do we say? No, it's all part of the body. As long as the body is immersed, the entire body is immersed. So if the ubar's yerech imo is considered to be a limb of the mother, so then we don't have the question so much of chatzitza. If the child is not considered to be yerech imo, then we have there's something inside the mother, right? There we have the issue of chatzitza. Okay. So there are three approaches, as we could well imagine, to this question. There are those that say conception is what determines it. Conception is what determines it. And that's why in the second Gemara that we did, that's why the child needed immersion in a mikveh. It was, right, the child was conceived by a non-Jewish mother. The child is considered to be non-Jewish, and it needs immersion in a mikveh. If that's the case, then why are the two brothers related? Then why is this considered to be his brother's wife? So the approach that's given is that normally we say that when a person converts, they are not related to other blood, biological family members. That's in a normal case. But when there was one act of gerus, when there was one act of conversion that took care of a group simultaneously, here there was one act of conversion that worked for three individuals. The mother's immersion in the mikvah converted her and Jim and Tim. Therefore, Rav Shmuel Rozovsky says, when there is one act of conversion that brings a group into the fold of Judaism, then those three are considered to be related. So therefore, in fact, it's conception, according to this opinion. In fact, it is conception. The child needs to convert. The child does convert along with the mother. And since it was a simultaneous conversion, therefore the family links remain. Okay, that is one approach. So we're saying that the Gemara that said the child needs immersion in the mikveh and explain why it's not chatzitza, that is what we look at. That is what determines the status. It is the conception that determines the status of the child, not the birth mother. And the reason why this is considered to be his brother in terms of incest, that is because the conversion took place simultaneously for all three, and therefore there is not a severance of any linkage between them. Others say that no, birth is the main determinant. Birth is what determines it. And therefore we understand fully why this is Jim's wife is Tim's brother's wife. But
birth is sort of like the finish. It's not the time when things are coming together.
Correct.
It's already finished.
Correct. So that's the question. The question is it the actual entering of the child, bringing the child into the world, that's considered the mother? Remember the kids' book, Are You My Mother? Well,
Yeah.
Going to the crane, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right? Which one is the mother? Is it the one who actually birthed this child? Or the one whose zygotes, whose chromosomes are 23andMe, is what made it happen? So others say no. The Gemara that we focus on is the one about the brothers being prohibited to one another because they were born as Jews. If that's the case, then what's the whole to-do about the immersion of the mother? Right? Why do the children need the immersion of the mother? And they say the children need the immersion of the mother not to be Jewish. They're Jewish from birth, because they were born to a Jewish mother. So what's the to-do then about the immersion? So Rav Tali Trupp says there is a lacking in Kedushat Yisroel. There's the status of being a Jew, but there's a certain Kedusha, a certain holiness that this child is lacking because the conception was with a non-Jewish mother. And therefore the immersion is not to make them Jewish. They're Jewish. But there is this spiritual component of Kedushat Yisrael, and that the child is lacking in. So according to that approach, it's the birth, but the immersion during pregnancy was to add this component of Kedushat Yisrael. And of course, if we have a question of is it A or B, we have a C opinion. And that is from Rav Avram Kana Shapira, who says, as some of you mentioned, the child is partially Jewish and partially non-Jewish. Meaning, there is the original DNA material that came from the egg of the mother. That's conception. And non-Jewish at that point. And then the mother at some point converted. And this child is growing inside this mother and is growing from this Jewish mother. So this child is a mix, partially Jewish and partially non-Jewish. Therefore, the brothers are considered to be halachic brothers, in as much you can't marry. You can't, well, if one were to have an affair with the other's wife, so that's partially brother's wife. At the same time, they need the immersion in the mikvah because they're partially non-Jewish. So what do we do with all of this nowadays? Right? What do we do with the Gemara's case? A woman who converts while she's pregnant. What do we do in terms of that child? Right? Well, so really, in that case, it's easier. Right? Because if we're looking at birth, he was born to a Jewish mother. If we're talking about, if we're looking at conception, well, the child underwent an immersion with the mother. I wonder, I want to ask the Beit Din, I wonder if, because we could also say, well, maybe it's conception, and maybe we say that, no, the Gemara says clearly it's not chatzitza. Yeah, so we wouldn't need anything more, right? I guess the question would be: is a newborn child considered to be a convert, or not? Right? If we say conception, that perhaps we would consider that child to be a convert along with the mother. We probably don't. But when it comes to surrogate motherhood, that we have today. Right? Someone very, very dear to me was unable to carry her own child, and they had a surrogate mother who carried the child for them and birthed the child for them. Right? This is in Israel.
The genetic material from
It was this person and her husband, right? Who the child was conceived, and then the fetus. I didn't ask too many questions, right? But
even where a donor, a Jewish donor woman, donates her egg to somebody who can't conceive but can carry.
okay.
And
So next week we're going to deal with how does that work in terms of, is that something that could be done, should be done, how should it be done,
has been
right? It certainly has been done, right? That'll be next week. Let me just wrap up over here. So the poskim have different approaches to this matter. There are some that say fatherhood takes place, Rav Zalman Nechemia Goldberg, fatherhood takes place at conception, and motherhood takes place at birth. Right? So he says clearly birth is what determines it. Or Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was not completely convinced by any of the proofs that motherhood is determined at birth. He was open to the possibility that it was determined at conception. Therefore, he treated the matter as a suffix. Okay? Now, if both mothers are Jewish, right, there is no issue in terms of the Jewish status of the child. The only thing is that that child would not be allowed to marry siblings from either one of those, either from the birth mother or from the conception mother. Now, in most cases, right, so the surrogate mother does it on behalf of a couple who can't, and the couple who can't, so it's the conception mother who's raising this child as her own, right? But that child, according to this, should be careful not to marry any siblings of that birth mother, because of the possibility that halachically we view the birth mother as the mother, or as a bit of both. Okay? And Rav Moshe Sternbach, he discusses a case of a Jewish woman who received an embryo from a non-Jewish woman, and he ruled that the child is partially Jewish, partially non-Jewish, in which case, right, you would have the child undergo a pro forma conversion in order to make sure that later on in life there won't be any issues that might be raised. But what's fascinating is we see that this modern day question actually hinges on a explanation of a pasuk, of the birth of Dinah, with that key, and she conceived and gave birth, that it says by all the others that it doesn't say by Dinah. So different ways of understanding what happened with Dinah. And then that's used, in fact, to answer a question of how could Shimon possibly have married Dinah, who was his sister, and we use that as an explanation. And then we have the very clear case of a woman who converted during pregnancy. So her status changed from she was non-Jewish when she conceived the child, Jewish when she birthed the child. We have two Gemaras that indicate, one indicates its conception, the other one indicates its birth. So you either have to explain that it's birth, you either hold that it's birth and explain why that Gemara which spoke about conception, or you hold it as conception and have to explain the Gemara that says that it's talking about birth. Or there are those that say that it's both, and therefore both there was the incest issue with the brother's wife and the need for immersion. And lahalacha, we also take on this, And misafek, from based on a doubt, one would cover their bases to make sure that there are no issues that will plague this child later on in life. Yes, Janet.
This also kind of, an adopted child kind of folds into this a little bit too, I think.
An adopted child does not fall into this.
Because isn't there
There's a teaching that if you raise an orphan, it's considered as if you gave birth, meaning you have the merit. But it doesn't. But that child, certainly, if the parents were non-Jewish, the child needs conversion.
Right, but I'm saying Jewish to Jewish. Isn't there a case where, like, if your adoptive legal mother dies, you still can't say Kaddish for your original birth
So again,
mother?
saying Kaddish is not right.
There is no Jewish adoption, period. A Jew can adopt, but there's no
Halachic Jewish adoption.
there's no adoption.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. A person could say Kaddish for someone that is near and dear to them, who was like a brother, sister, father, mother, right? As long as one's parents are not alive, or if one gets permission from one's parents, one can say Kaddish for another person. So all the things that you're talking about are not strict halachic issues, right? Now, we might say, actually stepbrother and stepsister can get married. A stepbrother and stepsister can get married.